is the Butcher of Bakersfield.
Hey guys, we're going to record part 2 of The Running Man, where we review a video for tabling on Everly 50NL that Mark recorded, I guess a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ago. And if you guys haven't seen the first part of the video, be sure to check it out. If you just go to threads started by me, you'll be able to find it. And I guess I'm here with Dan, my partner coach at Version 2 Poker. Say hi.
What up, bitches?
And I'm here, and Mark, the person who recorded this video, who post on the name WVU Skins fan on 2+2. Yep. Okay. Say hi.
Hey guys, what's up?
So we're just gonna pick up where we left off. I think I got the video back to the exact same point where we left off. And before we get started, I'll just drag this little text file on screen. This is Mark's HUD. So the top line, VPIP, PFR, steal, and 3-bet. And the second line, aggression factor, C-bet, fold to C-bet, and went to showdown. So, all right, I guess we'll just dive right in. I'll click play. So while we're getting started, Dan and Mark and I were talking about some of the things that happened in the previous video, and I guess Mark had already made some adjustments on, like river spots. Remember we talked about that one river value, or 2 river value betting spots. Mm-hmm. And you said you've already started to make some adjustments there. So I think, yeah. So I think we're already moving in the right direction.
Ace-5 suited is a very standard raise.
Yeah, 51-4 guy limps in and we isolate, and it's super standard. And checking back the flop again on a wet board multi-way, again super standard. I think everyone's going to agree on that.
Yeah, well, I would say that it depends on the opponent for me. Versus these kind of fishy guys, I definitely like just checking back the flop. But if my opponents are more on the regular side, I kind of like betting because I think that I'm going to be able to bluff them on any turn, jack or queen or king or heart, and their check calling range is going to be weighted heavily towards, like, you know, one pair kind of hands. So against players that are more competent, that have like a more well-defined pre-flop hand range and also have the fold button, I actually kind of like betting this board with the intention of bluffing them on later streets. But against like a fishy type of guy, that's just suicide. So
yeah, let's also talk about that. Like when you're talking about like the more well-defined, the thing about their well-defined range is that it contains a lot of hands like king queen, queen jack suited, ace jack, and when you see about this multi-way, like, you know, 2 guys, like, it's just they're not gonna be able to do much when they have ace jack. You know, like they might check raises here if they have like ace jack with the ace of hearts some of the time, but most of the time they're just gonna fold. And since their range is like their check calling range is 1 pair hands, and they're gonna check fold a lot of their broadways, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But versus 2 fish, they just don't have a fold button, like you said.
Right, and I think that they tend to like check raise their 2 pairs in sets because the board has so many draws as well. So when a reg elects not to check raise, their range is pretty face up. But against fish, it's just suicide to be betting there.
Yeah, hang on, I missed the turn action.
I think that one dude just
shoved
for like way more than the pot.
Oh.
Yeah, I think he just shoved.
Okay.
You know?
Okay. Yeah. So good fold. I was like, how did we lose this pot with the combo draw? But yeah, when he shoves for 5 times the size of the pot, we have to fold our ace high.
Yeah. I mean.
I would say that on table 1, I do not like opening ace-9 offsuit under the gun.
Right.
Yeah, and this is we actually ran into this in the last video where two hands we played with ace-9. So. Yeah, definitely just get that out of your range, dude.
Yeah, that's like, I open it in the cutoff or button as like a steal and stuff, but it's just not a value hand. It's just a piece of crap.
And I have since cut out ace-9 from under the gun, and I also hardly call with it in the blinds anymore to raises.
Yeah, definitely good. Should not be calling out of position with that hand like most of the time.
All right, so we'll talk about before the pre-flop action gets back to us. This guy looks like he's 73-39. relatively small sample, but we know he's a pretty crazy guy.
Mhm.
35 hands, 73, 39, pocket jacks in the big blind, and he opens under the gun. I think in general, we aren't three betting pocket jacks versus under the gun opens most of the time, but versus this guy, I sure hope we do. It's like a slam dunk value three bet. And on table 3, we're c betting on a king high dry board, which I think is good. What do you think about this turn check back?
Here.
Yeah, I did.
On table 3, we were the pre-flop raiser. I missed the pre-flop action. What did the guy limp call?
Yeah, he limp called. We c bet, and now we're on a turn after he check called flop.
Okay, Mark, what do you think that his flop check calling range looks like?
Any two clubs, any king, and I would say 6-7.
And what do you think about a hand like
Ace-5? He could, yeah, Ace-5 would be reasonable. Ace-4, maybe not Ace-4.
Yeah, any I'll just stop you right there. Any 4 or any 5. The guy's 52-4. Like he's gonna have a lot of hands like 5-7 suited or offsuit in his range. He'll have it's not just the ace-5s and ace-4s, and he's definitely calling with any pair on the flop. So.
Yeah, so I pretty much agree with that. Obviously, a king is calling. Any flush draw is calling. 6-7, 6-8. Also, ace-3 and ace-deuce have gut shots plus and over. And then there's a variety of ways, like Sean mentioned, that he could have... Like, he's calling with any pair. Like 7-5, 8-5. I mean, he's a huge fish. He could have jack-4 of hearts. Like, who knows? You know what I mean? So I think that when he check calls the flop, his range is super wide, like we said. And then this turn card is pretty much a blank. He might have the 10 of... Like, he might have 10-9 of clubs, a flush draw that hit a 10. But... all that stuff that we were beating on the flop, all his straight draws, all his flush draws, all his gut shots, all his 5s, all his 4s, we're still beating all of those hands. And the only thing we're losing to is the kings or the random, like, occasional time he turned to 10, which is not very much. So I would actually bet this turn again for value. Because I think we're still just beating so much of his range, and it's like kind of scary because, like, geez, we just have 6s. Can we really be like betting third pair for value? Like, but I think in this particular spot, when we think about his range, we absolutely can. So,
and I noticed that fish tend to check raise on the flop with like if he had 5-4, king-4, or king-5 or something like that. They tend to be check raising with those types of hands. Just something I've noticed.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the type of fish, but yeah, they are somewhat prone to do it. And, like, there's even the guys that'll, like, check min-raise top pair. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You see that a lot.
I see that.
Yeah. So we do check back, and yeah, I'm agreeing with Dan 100%. We should have value bet the turn. And now on the river, we can't really value bet anymore. Like, it's really, really hard to get called here unless we bet, like, $1 and hope to get looked up by a 5, you know?
Yeah, that's the other thing, is that all the value that we can earn from his draws, we get on the turn. We can't get any value from his draws on the river. I mean, if he bets us as a bluff, we can get some value. But on the whole, like, he's not going to be, like, bluffing too much. So we just get all the value from those draws on the turn, which is why we bet the turn. Now, as it turns out, he had a king. So I would have lost more on the hand than you would have, that you ended up losing. But I still think versus his overall range of hands, the turn bet is going to definitely be profitable for us.
Now, another thing I would do here is the fact that he does not lead the river after we check back the turn, and the fact that he doesn't value bet the king. I don't know if that means that he's just like scared because it's a weak kicker, or if he's kind of like trapping and he just wants us to bet again. But either way, I would definitely be taking note that he doesn't lead the river with a king. So if we ever did bet the flop and the turn checks through and he bets the river, he's going to have a much weaker range. Like, like one pair hands, he's not going to be betting top pairs very often. Unless maybe they have good kickers. Like maybe he'll bet king queen here, but not king 8. But yeah, I would definitely be taking note on that he's not firing that river.
It's not necessarily weaker range. I'd say he's got a more polarized range.
Sure.
Slow play, 2 pairs, or bluff.
Right. I agree.
Did you want to go back to that Jack's hand?
I think you just got the
yeah.
flop and we won. Is that what happened?
Yeah, but yeah, I guess there's not much to talk about. But Sean was talking about three betting versus that
yeah.
guy, which I did, and
Yeah, we
and
did
then
we
he
did three
called.
bet, which was good.
What was the sizing, by the way? Was it only to 4? I think the sizing.
No, 6.
Oh,
We went to
6?
6.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's totally standard. Yeah, and then betting the flop is good, and then
Just by the way, Mark and I have had a few conversations where, like, if this guy 4-bet, I know that Mark had like a kind of a habit of flatting 4-bets. If this guy were to 4-bet here, you just like fist pump jam the money in, like he 4-bets, you just shove, like you're just so happy. Yeah, you have jacks versus this guy. I mean, I'd be the happiest man on the planet if he 4-bet.
yeah, and just kind of a rule of thumb to the viewers of this video is if you're 3-betting jacks in the first place, you're probably usually shipping over a 4-bet. That's a very, very broad generalization, but like in spots where I don't really want to get my jacks in pre-flop, I usually don't 3-bet them in the first place. Now, sometimes there's guys that'll call 3-bets very, very wide and only 4-bet very narrow. And versus them, it makes sense to 3-bet jacks and fold to a 4-bet. But against like a lot of regulars, like if there's a spot where I just don't want to get my jacks in pre-flop, I'm less apt to 3-bet him in general.
Yeah. Let's talk. Let's just while we're on that topic, because I'm glad you said it that way. In general, you don't want to be 3-betting a hand like jacks to be folding to a 4-bet. Let's talk about just a few spots where we might 3-bet jacks and fold. Like for example, let's say that like a kind of nitty guy opens in the cutoff and a huge fish flats on the button, and we 3-bet jacks out of the blinds, and the nit, like we're talking about a pretty nitty guy, not just like a tag. If he decides to 4-bet there, like we could go ahead and 3-bet fold jacks to the nit and then get it in versus like the crazy fish, because we're targeting the fish, but then the net decides to give us action, which is not what our plan was. And some other instances, like if we were 3-betting, a somewhat passive fish, like say a guy was like 30-10 and we have a couple hundred hands on him, and he's never 4-bet us before, like that's a spot where we could 3-bet full jacks as well.
Yeah, I would agree. And then those are two very good spots for it. And then if we have a lot of hands on a regular, say we have about like 2,000 data mined hands on a regular, and his fold to c-bet stat is low, like 50%, but his 4-bet range stat is super low as well, like 1%. That means that he calls 3-bets really wide, but only 4-bets the nuts. So
sorry, you meant fold to 3-bet?
If his fold to 3-bet is like 50%,
yeah, okay.
But then his 4-bet range stat is only like 1%, that means that he calls so many 3-bets, but only 4-bets the nuts. And I would only trust those stats if you have, like, especially 4-bet range takes a while to come in. If you have a lot of data mined hands, you could actually do it against that very specific type of regular.
Yeah, and I'd say even with 1,000 hands, I'm probably not judging that. I'm probably not going off that stat super reliably. I'm going more off just like his overall stats in the situation. But yeah, if we had 2,500, 3,000 hands on a guy, yeah, I would totally agree. With the pocket jacks, we decided to bomb the flop. We bet 9 into 12, which is a really big bet for a 3-bet pot, and I think the sizing is awesome.
Yeah, I agree. Versus regs, I don't really like bombing flops and 3-bet pots because I like to 3-bet them a lot. I have a lot of bluffs in my range. I want to keep it balanced. But versus a fish on a wet board where there's so many draws and so many like random pairs you could have, he ain't folding much if you connect it. So just mash the pot button and get lots of value. So I like that jack's hand was played well in standard.
Hopefully something cool happens here in a minute.
Hey, Mark, just as a random side note to you, you might want to consider the preferred seat option.
I was just thinking that too.
Put you in the same seat every time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Sean, just out of curiosity, what seat do you sit in?
Bottom right.
I like the bottom left.
Yeah, I'm bottom right.
Yeah, I sit in the one that I don't know if you can see me clicking on your screen.
Yeah.
I don't know if that'll show up on the video. Yeah, I sit on that seat too.
Oh, you too.
Yeah, that's the one I sit on.
Mark,
and then Mark sits one to the left.
I'm to your left.
Sit in that seat, Mark. You run good in that seat.
Yeah. What else was I going to say? Oh, on Everleaf, I'll continue the video, but on Everleaf, you have to like manually sit yourself there every time.
Okay.
There's no like preferred seat option, but you can right click on that seat when you sit down and say move me here.
Okay, yeah, I've seen that. I've never used it though.
And then you tell your HUD and Hold'em Manager in the Hold'em Manager config that you have a preferred seed set.
Looks like we want a big pot with a straight. You want to back it up? Oh no, that was not us. I'm so used to sitting in that spot.
Yeah.
Somebody else won pot with a straight. That's funny. Well, ignore that. Guys.
There's one particular hand that I remember, and I think it's coming up pretty soon. But it was I don't know. It was a very tough hand. I ended up losing, and I think I.
Oh, don't spoil it. We don't want to know.
Okay.
Don't post results, man. Yeah, because the only thing is like if we already know the results, it can kind of like influence the way we talk about the hand. So even when we get to the hand, don't tell us it's that hand.
All right.
You know. Yeah.
I mean, there was several more big hands in this video.
Yeah. And by the way, in the blinds here, we choose to complete with ace-7 off. It's fine. I just worry that a lot of people, specifically people that are like struggling at 20-0 or at 50-0, I worry that they're not going to play this hand profitably, and like they're like, and you might think that's crazy, like, oh man, I have an ace and a 7, like how, you know, like that hand's pretty good, it only cost me 25 cents. I think you'd be surprised. I've looked at a lot of databases where, you know, people are completing in the blinds, and if you're not playing really really aggressively out of the blinds when you complete, you end up losing like extra money when you play these extra hands, or when you start completing with these kind of junky hands, your offsuit aces and offsuit connectors.
Yeah, well, I'm sure I play them pretty poorly, to be honest. Those are the hands.
That's not what I was saying, but
no, I'm saying it because I think I do, and
because you just have to think about the situation you're putting yourself in. We don't have a very good hand, and we're out of position without the initiative against, you know, multiple fish.
And let's say you flop an ace and you bet it, and then you get raised in a limped pot. I mean, I don't know what we do, call or fold. Or what?
Yeah, you just fold. All right, so bottom right table, we open pre-flop on the button, queen jack off. Obviously standard. We get two callers. This guy on the right looks like 35-12. The other guy looks 63-13. Both relatively small samples. And we go ahead and c-bet, and I think it's okay. I think we could check back here though.
What's the one
just given
stack size?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. It's hard to tell. I think he might have $5.44, but it could be more.
The other guy looks like he might only have $11 or something. It's hard to be on team.
He probably has 9 something because the min buy-in is 10, and it looks like he's new.
Yeah, so I would probably, to be honest, I don't hate the c-bet here, just to like kind of like get some value and kind of take the pot down most of the time. But I think I'd probably just check back here, and especially given stack sizes, and then like check back and try to either induce like a light call on the turn or get them to bet out at me.
Yeah, I agree with Sean. And I guess I agree partly. I would say that in fact I flat out don't like the c-bet. The reason being is that I don't think that we're at very much risk of getting bluffed on the turn, because we're against two kind of weaker opponents, so they're a little bit less risky to bluff. Plus, given that it's a three-way pot, everyone's kind of worried that like someone else has the ace. So it's not like in a heads-up pot, they're a lot more likely to just bet when you check back the flop. But in a multi-way pot, they don't like to stab it at as much with just pure air. So I think checking back the flop and then just betting when check to on the turn is a much more profitable line for us. And that $3 that we're putting in goes in much better on the turn than it does on the flop.
Yeah, let's talk about here on table 3. This guy limps and we fold queen 9 off in the cutoff. I think it's a clear isolate. Just kind of a missed spot there. It's not the greatest hand in the world, but certainly it's going to play well in position versus some fish.
Yeah, I agree. And just one note on that, Mark, that I would say, when these guys are limping, one thing that is important to keep in mind against like these limpy type fish is that big cards are key. So a hand like 5-6 suited is actually not very good against like the limp call-y type fish, because 5-6 suited is a hand that makes us money based on like semi-bluffing opportunities. And, you know, when we have a fish that never folds, there's really no semi-bluff. It's just kind of putting money in with a weak draw, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So the reason that hands like queen 9 off are no good against regs is because regs don't play hands, you know, regs don't play queen 7 off. But against the fish, it's good, because against the fish, remember, our whole strategy is not to like semi-bluff him and make him fold. Our strategy is to like flop like a decent pair and value bet him. So any two big card hands go way up in value against fish, and like speculative hands, you know, like deuces or small suited connectors, stuff like that, go way down in value against fish. So, you know, something like king 8 offsuit is like pretty darn good against like a super fish, but against a regular, it's just total trash. So, you know, just something to keep in mind when you're thinking about what hands to play against what player types.
Yeah, I agree with all that. On table 4, this is kind of one of those spots I was talking about where you have to be aggressive when you're completing. I know in this case we were the big blind, we did not complete, but let's just say we had completed with like say a 6-4 of diamonds in the small blind. I think this is the exact type of flop where we have to start, you know, being aggressive. I'd be leading out here with the gut shot. Basically, anytime I have 4 outs, I'm betting when it's a limp pot.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be betting here. This guy's stack size kind of sucks because we don't have a ton of wiggle room on turn, so we can't really barrel. But I think just leading out ourselves on the flop is going to be profitable on its own. Yeah. And then your c-bet on the ace king 5 is fine.
I don't know that I would lead out on that board with the 6-4, just because the guy's so short and so fishy. I don't know that I get quite enough folds there. It's close. I don't hate it, but I probably would just check fold the 6-4 myself. I kind of agree with the concept you're saying. I'm not disagreeing in theory. I just think versus that guy in that spot, I might.
Yeah. Here's another spot. 7-3. It was a limp pot. We were in the big blind. We flopped top pair and a gut shot, and we checked. I'd just be value betting that flop as well. And now that we have 2 pair, I mean, even though it's a 4 straight board, we still should be value betting.
Yeah, that flop is a must bet, though. I mean, top pair is pretty good there. We're going to get called by way worse. And there's so
and our hand's super vulnerable.
Yeah, the thing is think about what turn cards we don't want to see. Well, we don't want to really see a 3 or a 5. Well, I mean, I guess a 5 is fine because we have the gutter. And we don't want to see a 3, an 8, a 9, a 10, a jack, a queen, a king, or an ace, or a club. So really, kind of every turn card is crappy. I just mash the pop button on the flop.
Yep, I agree.
Sure, and they can call with worse so easily.
Yeah, and on this turn, even though it 4 straights, I would have just gone ahead and let out, value bet it. We're just going to get called by we'll get called by worse pairs and club draws and straight draws and gut shots and things like that.
By the way, just in general, if it's a limped pot and I flop top pair, I probably lead out 90% of the time or more. If I flop top pair in a limp pot, I just bet pot. That's just kind of my rule of thumb. I mean, obviously there's certain considerations that could change that, but just as a general rule of thumb for people, you flop top pair in a limp pot, just bet. Just start betting right away. Don't wait for other people.
And you got to realize the reason it's a limp pot is because there's a fish in it, right? Fish limp, regs don't. So it's a limp pot because there's a fish in the pot, and top pair versus fish is generally pretty darn good. Oh, this guy's deuce of diamonds got counterfeited. That's not fair. Game of poker's pretty rigged.
Jeez, I ran so bad today.
Yeah, I know, I heard.
Oh my god, some people that might be watching this video might be aware of Sean and my challenge. And at NL20 today, I was down $180 at one point at NL20. It was shocking. It was, I mean, I never seen.
Well, that's euros, right? That's only 7 buy-ins. That happens.
Yeah, I guess.
It's probably less than that. It's probably Oh, it's probably 6 buy-ins, maybe. I don't know, but yeah.
Dan's just been running good his whole life, so he loses 6 buy-ins in a day, and he's like, what is going on? It's so rigged. He's just.
And
I can feel the steam coming out of Dan's head right now. He's like, this is Sean. He fucking needles me every time I lose.
I know.
I
Every
dropped
time Sean runs
200
bad, I'm like, oh, hang in
days
there.
ago.
Oh, Sean runs bad. I'm like, hang in there, bro. It'll turn around soon. You know you're a player. I run bad. He's like just desperate to twist the knife. He's like, finally, thank God Dan lost. Ha ha.
All right. So a couple things going on. Pocket queens. We make it 250 out of the blinds after 2 limpers. I think we talked about making 250 as a standard, but it's 250 plus another one for every extra limper, so I'd probably make it $3 here, possibly even more given how fishy both of these guys are. I might make this 3 or 350 out of the blinds with the pocket queens, but certainly raising is correct. I just probably would make it bigger.
Yeah.
And then
You just have to don't be afraid to go big. You got to get a feel for how much they're willing to pay. If you can get called, if you can make it 450 and get called, then hell, do it. But
if I could make it 450, yeah.
3 is like my standard there. I agree with Sean. I go 5x out of position over a limper plus 1 for each additional limper.
Yeah, I agree. It's just kind of like in position. We do 4x plus 1 for limper. Just out of position, we just add 1 big blind to the whole equation. So now it's 5x plus 1 for extra limper. With a king queen out of position here, kind of interesting spot. The guy's 36-9 over 22 hands. He does open a 175. I don't know if there's a pot button pre-flop at raise and fold. Oh, but there is on some other Everleaf skins. So he does click the pot button. Kind of interesting spot on whether or not to 3-bet, given that he looks somewhat like a passive fish. And I think just given his stack size, it looks like about $15. I'd probably just flat.
Yeah, I would never 3-bet here. I mean, first of all, the guy in the big blind looks like a huge fish. I want to play with him.
Yeah.
And then
he only has $5 though.
This other guy is like the original opener is, just against a 36-9. They just not raising quite enough for me to be 3-betting king queen by default. I just like calling with it.
And we flop second pair here. 3-handed. I think we should just go ahead and c-bet. Like if we check here, like in some ways, some guys might look in this and be like, man, if I bet, I'm only going to get called by a king. 1, that's not true, and 2, that doesn't make checking like the greatest option ever. Like checking still would kind of suck because now we're out of position 3-handed and we're kind of giving up control of the pot. So I would definitely just value bet. We'll definitely be called by hands like ace 5, ace 4, 5, 6, pocket 7s, ace 3, ace 2, etc. What do you like here on the turn, Dan?
I can't tell what his stack size looks like.
Yeah, it's tough. I think he's got about a pot size bet left. Maybe a little. There's 18 in the pot. I think he's got about 16.
Geez, I'd probably check and then value bet the river then, about half pot on the river.
Yeah, and if he ships the turn, what are you doing? Yeah, that's the tough spot. I think I'd probably just call if he shoved the turn, but I wouldn't be happy.
I don't know. I might fold.
Oh wait, I think he has 36. So that makes it easier.
because I'm always full stack.
Yeah. No. The other guy.
Oh.
I'm talking about the other guy. I think the other guy's shoving for more than pot here, and we have him. Yeah. So I think this guy's over. Yeah, he's shoving for 2x the pot here, and we just.
Oh, really?
Choice. Yeah.
Jeez, well, you know what, though? This is the same guy that when we had ace-5 of diamonds, shoved... Remember we folded ace-5 of diamonds? We were talking about should we bet that board? This is the same guy that did that. I think that's... Maybe the player changed, but I'm pretty sure it was that seat.
Yeah, it was that seat. Yeah, but we only have 13 hands on this guy. It may or may not be the same guy, but even if it was the same guy, I don't think I'd call here. Yeah, I just think we're dead when we're losing, we're dead.
Yeah, but I think we could be winning a lot versus that guy too. I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously this is a standard fold, right? But if this is the same guy, and I haven't been paying close attention, it's hard with talking in the other tables. But if that's the same guy that overbet shoved on that other board, and he's just like a 70 VPIP fish that's just kind of bomb shoving for twice the pot all the time, I might just go ahead and call him there because I think that his range is way wider than a king. If that's the case, and versus 99% of players, it would be a bad call. But if he's the type that's just randomly just mashing all in all the time, then it might not be so bad.
Yeah, I guess my thoughts on that would be like, even so, like when the guy just might like be like deathly afraid of draws. So like every time he just gets top pair, he ships it in. And so we've only seen him ship it in twice. Again, assuming he's the same guy, and we don't have time to back it up and find out. But I think we see guys. I see guys do that a lot. Like, you know, and like I'll level myself into a call. Man, this guy keeps shoving, and they just like always end up with top pair. He'll just have like king 7 there all the time. And so I'd probably fold there.
I've been wrong so many more times than I've been right with those types of hands versus these types of players. And
but I know what Dan's saying there. I think I would fold there.
I would definitely raise 8-10 suited there.
Yeah, that's why I backed it up, 100% for sure. You got to think about it. Remember, Mark? Earlier in the video, you isolated this guy with pocket sixes.
Mm-hmm.
This is exactly what Dan was talking about. Queen 9 and 10-8 suited, Queen 9 off and 10-8 suited are actually better hands to ISO raise than pocket sixes. You know, those hands play better than pocket sixes. Pocket sixes, like we flop a set or we flop an underpair, and like that's about all we do. Like other than that, we're not super happy. And with hands like Queen 9 and 10-8, we just have a lot more flexibility. We can see bet flops with, you know, basically air, and then turn things like gut shots or flush draws or open enders. But with pocket sixes, you don't do that very often. You never pick up equity on turns. You just kind of like flop an underpair or the nuts, never anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Ooh, don't call that. Yeah, I don't. So here's with this King Jack, I don't like that call.
Yeah.
There's a couple reasons. One, we're not closing out the action, and two, I mean, I know the guy only has like 9 big blinds, so you're like, oh, King Jack's probably pretty good against his range. But if we pulled up Poker Stove here, I think you'd be surprised at how wide his range has to be for King Jack to be flipping.
Pull it up real quick, Sean. I think it's an important illustration.
Sure.
Because he did make the call, so give him 8s plus and Ace Jack plus to start with.
Yeah, which for sure we're getting crushed by. Yeah, so he's 2-to-1. We're almost a 2-to-1 dog.
Which obviously makes it a terrible call. Now let's widen it out. Let's give him any pair.
And we'll start giving him like broadways and some suited connectors.
Give him King
too.
Queen. Give him Ace 10. Give him all the suited aces too.
And I would even think any ace he would shove.
Yeah, we'll give him any ace. That's fine. All right, so now we're flipping with his range. Okay, so this is how wide his range has to be. So for us to be flipping, and I don't even know if having a 5, like if we're flipping, but slightly.
We're still an underdog.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Even with the 75 cents of dead money, I don't think it makes up for it, and it most certainly doesn't make up for it when we're not closing the action. So like, I mean, this guy's range just has to be like just so wide. I mean, he just has to be going crazy with shoves. And by like, if he was doing this like a range this wide, I think we're going to be ahead on this one. No, not even then. If he was doing it with a range that we're ahead of, like you're gonna know it. I mean, he's just gonna be jamming every hand. All right, now
we're finally ahead.
Yeah, we're just barely ahead. We have a 2% edge, which probably is eaten up by the rake, and he's shoving 40% of hands. This is how wide he has to jam to make King Jack a call.
Yeah, because that second range where we were 44.5%, that's important to note that even though we're 44.5%, there's no money in the pot yet. There's nothing there except the blinds. So even at 44.5%, it's still a minus EV call. So,
let's see. Yeah, Ace 10 suited does a lot better. To be honest, I'd probably only call him with like 8s plus and Ace Queen. It's when we're not closing the action. If we were closing the action, I might widen that to maybe like some Ace Jacks and pocket sixes or something. But I probably wouldn't go much wider than that. So, okay. Yeah, so I think that illustrates the point. He just has to be shoving ridiculously wide.
Now, if we had raised King Jack and he 3-bet shoved, you know, if we like made it $1.50 and he shoved for $4 or $5, whatever he has, then we're snap calling because now that 44% is plenty enough because there's money in the pot. But when there's no money in the pot, it's just like you got to be like straight up like ahead of his range.
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah, and then also remember, there's a couple other things. We're not closing the action, and there's rake involved. So not only do we have to be like ahead of his range, we have to be pretty well ahead of his range. We want to be a pretty decent favorite versus his range, because there's times that, like in this case, this guy jammed on us over the top. There's other times where people are going to cold call behind us and put us in shitty spots. So guys jamming even for $4.50 there. We want to be pretty well ahead of his range before we start calling there when we're not closing out the action. So we isolate with ace king, and we get a call from this guy, and it looks like he's got a pot size bet, so I'd probably just ship it in on him.
On table 4, I would have
The ace jack.
definitely c-bet that flop.
Yeah, I missed it. Good catch.
See, the thing with ace jack on that board is, first of all, you're just going to win with a c-bet a lot. Like, he's probably just going to fold, like, pocket fives, which is a great thing for us because we're losing to that hand. And if he's got a hand, like, say he's just got random, like, 7-8 of hearts. Well, first of all, we don't want to let him get a free pull to hit a pair and beat us. And then we don't want to check and let him bluff at a turn and make us fold our hand either. So we just win a lot with a c-bet. And we do have a gut shot to nuts, which is great. And in some ways, we're also our ace-jack is also not just necessarily a total bluff, because he can actually call us with worse hands, because he can call with jack-10, he can call with ace-10, and then just random diamond draws that we're actually value betting against. So
yeah, if you guys have ever watched a grindcore video, he calls it a two-way bet, which is like, because what happens is these guys call with draws and fold made hands when we bet here. So when he calls with his draws, we're value betting versus those, but we're bluffing against hands like pocket fives and sixes and sevens. So it's just like it's kind of a strange concept where, like, not only do we make him fold hands that beat us, but we make him call with hands that are worse.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's like pretty much a home run c-bet on that board for that reason.
Bull shizzle.
Okay, yeah, see, when you were talking about not value betting wet boards, that's exactly the type of board I was thinking of. That would be a wet board that you would not want to value bet. Or c-bet.
You mean c-bet?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, it depends. One, this guy's 53 VPIP,
Yeah.
so his range is a lot wider. We're also in position, and we also have equity, so it makes it a lot different. This isn't like this would be kind of a dry board because it's not super connected, but it does hit like like if a tag calls this pre-flop, like they're gonna have a lot of king queens, jack tens, queen jacks, ace jacks, things like that can play back at us on this board. Even versus a tag with a gut shot, we're gonna be c-betting this board.
Okay. That was my next question. If this was like a 21-18 guy, would we still be c-betting? Okay.
Oh yeah, for sure, because he's still a big part of their range is going to be made up of like 2s through 10s.
And exactly what you're saying. Yeah, you get him to fold the worst hands and call with. Yeah. All right. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and then on the turn, I think we have to call with the ace jack, because he's just going to lead his entire range. Like once we check back the flop, he's just going to bet everything. So like we probably just fold it to 8 high half the time.
Which is why it's good to bet the flop, because we prevent that. One other thing, Mark, you mentioned, like you said, Sean, you said don't c-bet wet boards. When I think of boards, Mark, by the way, that are good boards to c-bet, like king high, queen high boards are usually pretty good boards to c-bet. And I think when Sean's saying don't c-bet on draw heavy boards, the kind of boards that are usually bad to c-bet are like 3 kind of middling cards. If it's like 10-9-7, 9-7-5, 8-6-5, those kind of board textures, those are usually the kind of like wet boards that Sean is probably referring to. Jack 10-7, those kind of boards that are 3 cards that are kind of in the middle. Those are like the disaster c-bet boards. But
yeah, this is kind of the rule of thumb I use. If there's 3 cards and they're all from 8 to queen, it's a pretty shitty board. Yeah, because like it just connects with so much. There's just so much they can have, and that doesn't mean we can't always 3-bet those or c-bet those boards. But in general, those boards become much tougher to get away with a pure bluff c-bet.
Yeah,
right, and then we ice.
c-bet our queens, and this spaz guy shoves for $100 or whatever. Are you calling or folding?
The spaz guy's not in the pot, so I don't know.
Did he leave? Is this a different guy?
He doesn't have cards.
Oh, he's not in the pot. Okay, I found his cards for some reason. Would you call with queens versus him?
Yeah, if it's the third time I had seen it, for sure. But I would also, this is also like a slightly different board too, because like I feel like this is the type of board where this guy could shove tens or 7x.
What would be
but
the bottom of your calling range if he went all in? Given what we've seen so far, just out of curiosity.
Queen 7,
Okay.
something like that, like something that's gonna beat some of his 7x's.
Okay, so you're ready to call him kind of late.
Yeah, if he had done it, like if he decided, like if he called us that time, he decided to shove again. I mean, now I've seen him shove 3 times. You know, that's a habit, not a fluke.
I don't know what happens the rest of the video, but I'm just asking because it may end up coming up with this spazzer. I mean, he is playing 71 VPIP, so probably.
Yeah, and it's also given what we've seen, it's also like a possibility. Like if we thought something was kind of close and we weren't sure what bet size to go with, I might go with a smaller bet size to snap off a shove.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
All right, yeah, we got to stop this with ace 9, dude. All right, like I know this guy's 48-5, but like your hand's not good, and you're gonna end up like this guy's 73 VPIP in the big blind. And you're just gonna end up 3-handed with a pretty shitty hand out of position, and you've bloated the pot. Like I would probably just complete here. I don't like this open out of the small blind. And there's like, and if you run filters on your database, the difference in EV between ace 10 and ace 9 is remarkably, it's like it'll probably blow your mind how much better ace 10 is than ace 9.
Yeah,
and it's simply because
on that, ace 9 is actually called the gimp hand for that specific reason.
I have never heard that, but I don't appreciate you making fun of gimps on my video.
It's called the gimp hand. You know, ace 10. Part of the reason too is ace 10 can make a straight.
Right. It's just like ace 6, like ace 5 is significantly better than ace 6 because at that point your kicker doesn't matter very much, but it can make a straight.
Right. That's the whole thing. And just a thought on opening ace 9 there. The one time I would do it is if, first of all, I would want the big blind to be a tight player. And then if I specifically knew that my fish limp folded pre-flop or also had a relatively high fold to c-bet, then I would go ahead and do it because I have a lot of bluffing equity. So in like with a specific read, I would do it, but I agree with Sean that just most of the time it's just like, you know, it's just kind of skewy, and I would just complete as well.
Let's also talk about this table dynamic here, and I don't know why I didn't mention this earlier. Just for the same reason that I would not be opening ace 9 out of position, although in general I wouldn't, but I'd be opening relatively tight on this table out of position, and that's because we have 3 guys that are both over 40 VPIP, and they're all like passive pre-flop. I would probably change my standard open size, you know, like from 3x to 4x, and my isolation size from 4x to 5x. Like, you know, when this guy limps for 50 cents, I'd probably just start isolating to 250. We have 3 guys that are all over 40 VPIP. They're all loose passive. They're going to limp call. They're going to pay off our value bets, and we have to play somewhat tighter here than we would on some other tables where there's only like 1 fish. So just jack up the price, make them pay extra to get in the pot with you.
I agree with everything Sean just said.
Sometimes hard to remember that stuff in game, even for me, because you just get so used to one size, and then you're just kind of like clicking buttons. You're like, okay, isolate.
See, on the table 1 here, I opened on the button, and this guy who lived the call, and now I'm c-betting. Okay, and he folds. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the c-bet's fine. If you had like some decent reads on this guy and you wanted to check back and just snap call 2 streets, I think that'd be reasonable too, because he is 60-18. So I think both plans would be reasonable, but c-betting is fine. What's your plan here, Mark, on table 3? It's kind of an interesting spot because we flop a gut shot with 2 overs in position versus 2 fish. Do you think you like c-betting here? Do you think you like checking back? What are your thoughts on it?
I'm c-betting. I think I did when I played this hand, but I can also, I don't know. I guess I could see both checking back and c-betting.
What would you do with a hand like King Queen?
Uh, I mean, I think I'm c-betting this board most of the time, if not all the time.
Yeah, I think probably I would give up. This might be like the worst bluffing hand I have, like my ace X's. I would probably give up on these wheel boards in particular. It's kind of like a unique texture. Fish love ace high, and they are never ever folding ace high on the flop or the turn, and not always the river either. So I think like on this board with ace jack, I would c bet just because we have so much equity, and we can actually get called by worse ace highs, and draw like 6x draws and things like that. But with king queen, I'd probably just give up. What do you have to say about that, Dan? You agree?
Yeah, I agree. I have a little bit different reasoning, but yeah, I agree that the fish love playing ace-x hands, and on this type of board, I don't expect a c-bet to work very much. So I would also check that king-queen. But I would c-bet ace-jack for sure, and I'm value betting with my ace-jack. I think
that's what I said.
Any random six, any random flush draw, worse aces, it's like just a straight up like it's kind of a home run value bet. Like I'm like happy to get called when I bet my ace.
Yeah, that's, I think we said the same thing there. Yeah, so a theme from the last video, Mark, was that we weren't value betting rivers in a lot of spots, and I think a theme from this video that's come up several times is that we're not c-betting in spots that we should be, and this is specifically like spots where boards are either relatively dry or we have a decent amount of equity, and we choose not to c-bet it. Like this ace jack, like Dan said, it is a value bet. But like even when we get called by better, like if we get called by 4x or 5x, like we still have a lot of equity versus all those hands. So not c-betting here is kind of just like giving up your share of equity in the pot, which is a lot. And I think we saw that with the ace-jack on the king-queen board. We also saw it with like you're not double barreling the sixes on the king-5, 4-10 board. So I think, in general, the theme on this video has kind of been c-bet, or just bet more in general, bet more often in general.
Yeah, for value. Just go for thinner value everywhere. Everywhere that you got decent hands, just be betting them more often. Don't just indiscriminately start bluffing more. But when you have like something, go ahead and bet your something. Because just from like kind of a theory standpoint, Mark, when you're like betting the flop as like a continuation bet, like when you have a hand that you're not too sure of, like some sort of marginal draw or whatever, second pair type of thing, like who knows? Like in order for a c-bet to show a profit, if you c-bet full pot, you need that to work 50% of the time, right? Half the time you win the pot, the other half you lose the same amount. But so if you're c-betting less than full pot, which we always are, we need the c-bet to work less than 50% of the time just to show a straight profit with air. And then given that you like some sort of marginal draw or second pair hand that's got, the second pair is going to have 5 outs, whatever. Like all the hands that you're betting have some sort of equity. So when you factor in the fact that you can improve, your c-bet only has to work like maybe 30% of the time, in order to show a profit. So I would just kind of keep that in mind when you're thinking about making some of these like flop bets or like thin turn bets or stuff like that. Like it doesn't really, when you're betting with equity, you only have to get folds like very little for it to show a profit.
And just to kind of re-emphasize, this is kind of like one of those counterintuitive spots in poker, and I know I've talked to Mark about it, and I've talked to several of my students about it. They can, like, it's one of those things where it's like, man, I just have to stop betting because these fish never fold. Well, the thing with when you have equity and you're laying yourself odds by by betting into a pot that's already pre-existing, there's already money in the pot. They can actually call us significantly more often than they fold, and we still make money by betting there. So it's like something that's hard to get your head around in real time, but over the long run, you end up making tons of money there. And think about it this way: when you have like a draw of some sort, if you're passive with it, let's say you have a flush draw, you have about a 20% chance to hit your flush draw on the next card. So if you check and call with it, you're going to win that pot 20% of the time because you hit your flush. But if you bet with it and they fold, say, a third of the time, and then they fold a third of the time, and then you make your hand 20% of the time, now you're going to win the pot half the time. So now you've now you've more than doubled the amount of times that you win that pot. So,
Yeah, and Sean, you were when you looked at my database, you were kind of saying that I'm making just a ton of money c-betting, and I'm not doing it enough. I think I was c-betting around 56%, maybe, which was pretty low. So,
yeah, and you're getting something like 55% success.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's one of the things I've been working on. I've just been c-betting a lot more recently.
Also, let's talk about the pocket twos hand. Again, like you isolate here, this spot where depending on the table, I can't tell what the two guys behind us look like. I might even possibly limp behind here if the two guys behind me are passive. But raising here is okay, I think. It's just that it's interesting that you're raising pocket twos, but again, on that bottom left table, we had been folding queen 9 and 10-8. And, like we've already covered, just kind of hammer it home, 10-8 and queen 9 plays significantly better than pocket twos.
Yeah, big cards are good against fish. Little cards suck. That's all there is to it. It's very, straightforward concept.
Bottom left table.
Interesting to happen with the 5-7 in the table 3, but I think that just in the interest of keeping the video moving forward.
Yeah, I saw it too. I think the turn check fold.
Yeah, I would not.
Yeah,
that, but
yeah, I agree. But I saw it too. I just didn't. I feel like we've. We've actually made good time on this video. We're coming up on an hour. We've covered 16 minutes. Last time we only covered 14. We're chugging along. But I totally agree. I just didn't feel like pausing the video to to cover it.
Raising the 2s is totally standard. C-betting the 10s is also standard to me.
The guy ships it in huge here. I think we haven't. This guy's been at the table for a little bit with us. We haven't seen him do anything aggressive post flop.
Yeah, he's not the shipper.
He's
not the mad shipper. So I would just fold.
Yeah, I was just gonna fold here. I'm not gonna be happy, but I'm gonna fold. I'm just not happy as in like it just sucks that we get shoved on with our 10s. But I think we just have to fold here.
And I think that's the conclusion that I came to.
Combo we're flipping versus his good draws. We're just drawing almost dead to a jack.
Yeah, and we haven't seen this guy shove in recently, so there's no reason to think he's bluffing. There's no reason to think that he's value shoving a 7. I think it's just pretty likely he has a jack there most of the time. And maybe he's just, oh, by the way, he instantly set out. He had the nuts. But this is a super fish tell. 100%, 110% accurate. When they shove the money in, and then and they already click the sit out button before the hand's over, and then they sit out, you can just rest assured they just had the nuts, because their heart just starts pumping, right? And they can't handle the pressure, man. They just sit out.
Hit and run.
Yeah, I see that all the time. They do that, and then they win a big pot, and then
they're just out of there.
That's the last you see of them until
so
tomorrow.
Yeah, so 100%. Now I'm 100% confident that he had a jack when he shoved it in there and insta set out. Top right, king 6. I think we could isolate there. Okay, we would have fought the top pair. Damn it. All right, let's ace king. I mean, I'm pretty confident that Mark is going to squeeze here, but I wanted to, because I had a coaching session today that specifically dealt with a situation like this where a guy kept my student was facing. We were doing a hand history review. My student was facing a guy that was pretty aggressive. He was like a 35-20 fishy-ish type guy, and the guy had raised in the cutoff, and my student flatted with ace king out of the blinds, and he said he just can't, he doesn't want to 3-bet ace king and ace queen because he always misses the flop, and then he feels like he always gets owned when he misses the flop. So I wanted to just kind of talk about this concept just briefly for people paying attention, people watching the video that may run into that same fear, when they're 3-betting a hand that's not already made. So there's a couple of things. One, they're going to fold to the 3-bet some of the time. Even the fish are going to fold some of the time. And two, even when you even if you miss the flop, you get to c-bet, and if we're c-betting half pot, they only have to fold a third of the time. And if they, almost everybody's going to fold about, a third of the time or more to your flop c-bet. And three, the times that these fishy guys show up with ace 10 and you both flop an ace and you get their stack 100% of the time that you both flop an ace, just so much more than makes up for the times that, you lose a flop c-bet and a 3-bet pot with ace king. I just wanted to cover that briefly. It's just noticing like some people are like so afraid of.
Now, what do you think about my sizing here?
How much are you making it? 10? I think that's a little much.
Yeah, I'd probably go 8. Maybe 775.
Yeah, I was
just to keep
thinking
it up.
750.
Yeah.
You just
I think big.
When you make a 10 man, the problem is it just makes him too hard for him to call with worse. We want them in there with like King Jack and Ace 10 and God knows what else, you know. I mean, I understand he's a pretty big fish, but like at the same time, you know, it's just being a little bit crazy. And like,
and then Mark proves us wrong because it goes 3 ways to a flop.
The other downside of making it that big is it also makes it a little bit harder to c-bet because at a certain point when you make it so big pre-flop, there's no room.
Yeah,
to
your
c-bet
c-bet's a
'cause
jam.
that like pot commits you. So you know when you make it that size, you deny yourself the ability to c-bet, which Sean was just talking about as part of the profit center.
I think on this flop, you know, if either of our cards was a club, we just jam it in. But given that we completely missed the flop, I hope we're going to check fold here.
Yeah.
I'll explain. I made it 10 because I was thinking if any, they're either going to shove over or they're all going to fold.
Yeah, that's that. All right, this is an interesting card.
Yeah, just for a second though, Mark, that's the wrong thinking, man. You don't want to make it. You don't want them to fold. It's what Sean was just saying. We want them to call with worse. We want them to call with King Queen and King Jack and King 10 and Ace Queen and Ace Jack and Ace 10 and Ace 5 suited and just random crap like 8-6. You know, like we have a strong hand, so it's not like making a 10 so that they fold is something that we're trying to accomplish. When we're 3-betting Ace King, we're doing it because we have a really good hand and we want to play a nice big pot versus their crap hands with our good hands. So making it like 10 to force them to like fold a lot or then like shove if they have something really good is like the exact opposite of what we want to accomplish. What we want to accomplish is to like keep them in there with like all sorts of junky hands and you know and then there's like still plenty of room on the flop and turn and river to get all the money in. So yeah, I don't like that reasoning. If your reasoning is that like, hey, I think they're so fishy that they're just going to call my $10 raise because they're that fishy, then I like the reasoning. But if the reasoning is like that we want to like, you know, make them either shove or fold, that's like definitely the wrong way to approach it.
All right, fair enough.
All right, so on this turn card, kind of interesting. We have about, it looks, again, apologize to the viewers because it's tough to read stack sizes here, but it looks like we have about a pot size bet left. I guess a little over. I guess we have about $40.
Well, we probably started the hand with $50. So
yeah, so we have about $40 into 31.75. This is kind of interesting turn card. I'm not even sure what I like here. This is a spot I'm so rarely in. I mean, I guess jamming can't be terrible, but I feel like we're not getting called here very often if we ship it in. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like a queen would have bet the flop. I feel like a jack, certainly the guy in position would have bet a jack. Yeah, I'm not sure what I like here.
I might go for like some sort of retardo third pot bet to get called by any club and any one pair hand, and then shove on river blanks and check fold scary rivers.
But if you're trying to get, like, if you're betting 1/3 pot and you're trying to get called by any club, like, you're giving him direct odds to draw to his club.
Yeah, well, that's certainly better than checking though.
Well, okay, that's true. Yeah, I don't know. This is a tricky spot. I think I'd probably just jam it in. Dan would go for the smaller bet. I don't think it's a spot that we're gonna end up in all that often. Like this massively huge 3-bet pot, 3-handed with top pair on this weird board. So
I don't mind the jam because the other guy checked again, and now like everyone has been like the guy that that acted before us could have been checking like a big hand, and I don't think he would check it again. So
yeah, and then it looks like Mark was debating on a bet size, and then timed out and checked. So and now on this river, I think we should just value bet maybe like your 1/3 pot on the river. Oh, don't check it. Don't do it. Okay. You almost clicked the button. I saw it. So yeah, very very strange spot, but Yeah, I mean, it looked like we were going to bet the turn, and we just timed out. So at least you were going in the right direction there.
The other thing about like the third pot bet on the turn is I think it gets called by a jack or a queen, and I think that even though they're fish, they might fold those hands to a jam on the turn.
Yeah. All right, and I think we're coming up on an hour here, so I guess we'll just I guess this is a good time to wrap it up unless something interesting happens here.
Yeah, because I can see that we probably still have enough content for one more installment of the video series, judging by the progress bar. So,
yep. So I'll go ahead and pause it now. Let
right.
me write down this. I'll write down the time, and we'll make sure to start with the Ace-10 hand because it looks like it could be interesting. All right. Any final notes, Dan, before we sign off?
I don't think so. Just from a coaching standpoint, the Ace-9 came up a bunch, and I think we've hammered that Mark enough about that. So I think that that's come across clearly. And I would say that the morals of the story to take away are big cards are good against fish. So when the fish are limping, go ahead and be raising like the 8-10 suited and like the Queen-9 and stuff like pocket deuces actually are not that great against like the limpy fish. So just remember that like big card hands are like the way to go against the fish. King-8 offsuit goes way up in value versus fish. And don't be scared about going for thinner value and betting with equity on flops and turns more often. Even with like that like pocket sixes on the King-5-4 with the 2 clubs. Going for like the thin value or like sometimes checking back the Ace-Jack on the King-Queen-X. Just be playing your hands that have good equity a little bit more aggressively. So it's not about like just spaz 3-barrel bluffing with air all the time. It's about like when we have good equity in the pot, putting money in, and then not putting money in when we just have crappy equity. So yeah, those are my closing thoughts.
Yeah, Mark, anything you want to add or ask a question about?
No, I think it's been good. I especially like the part where you brought up the stove and showed. I think it's going to help. I mean, it certainly helped me to realize how bad of a hand that is to be calling, even when a fish shoves for like 10 big blinds or something. I think that was really good. And since this video, or since I recorded this session, yeah, I've really started. I don't play Ace-9 like I have been in the video, and
yeah, I tell you what, Mark. After 2 videos,
I think I'm making
He's
some
just gonna-
improvements, so.
You're just gonna fold Ace-9 every time. You're like, I hate this hand. All right, I think maybe for the next video, Mark. Well, we talk about this off camera, but I think maybe for the next video, instead of continuing with this, is maybe doing another. Since Mark has probably learned a lot from these two videos, maybe having Mark record another session, another 30-minute session that we could review and see how much has changed.
Yeah, I'd be
Sure.
happy to.
Yeah, and then also I know that we have plans on, just for the viewers, we also have plans on doing some hold a manager review, like traditional coaching style videos with Mark as well. So, at some point we'll probably knock off the final installment of this. We might have Mark do another video, and we'll also be doing some database stat reviews in the future. So keep your eyes open for that, guys, and also some traditional hand history review and hold a manager as well. So
yeah, you guys are going to get to know Mark really, really well.
But by the end,
All right.
Mark is going to be crushing. So
Yeah.
Let's hope so.
All right, guys. Version 2 poker signing off.